An organization providing supportive housing to people with disabilities is looking to expand its services. Jessica Reyes spoke with the executive director of Colorful Dreams.
Thank you, Edward, so much for joining us. Let's talk about supportive housing. What specific gap does Colorful Dreams aim to fill that other programs may not address?
Especially in the state of New Jersey, when we speak of supportive housing, it's a very broad term. And there are a lot of different types of housing that fall under that, both in terms of the housing that can be provided, group homes and other forms of assisted living, or the fact that supportive housing can mean a broad range of individuals who need the housing itself. So what we focus primarily on is those who need assistance with the activities of daily living, which is most often associated with individuals with disabilities or the elderly.
And how many people are currently served by your housing initiatives? What is the need that you're seeing?
So I'll speak first to the need, and then I'll speak to our organization's role. As of right now in the state of New Jersey, there is a very significant need for individuals who need this sort of housing. Just in terms of individuals with I/DD or intellectual or developmental disabilities, most of the current counts put the figure above 4,000 on the CCW Community Care Waiver waiting list. That program is one of the biggest programs in the state for emergency placement for individuals with disabilities. So through this current administration, the Murphy administration, there's been over $1 billion worth of investment in this sort of housing, and it has made significant impact on the availability. Programs brought through by the NJEDA or the HMFA, specifically the Special Needs Housing Trust Fund, figures put that at increasing the availability of this sort of housing above 30%. One figure even puts that before this program was initiated, we in the state of New Jersey provided between 150 and 300 supportive housing beds per year. Since this program has come on, that's increased to over 600. So that's more than double the original figures. So while there has been significant strides in providing this, there's still that shortfall that I mentioned earlier of 4,000 people just with disabilities. And so Colorful Dreams, we're a young organization, a startup organization. So we currently find ourselves in a position that's not unfamiliar to most first-time homebuyers, and we are waiting an opportunity in a competitive marketplace with significant housing scarcity. And while we continue to develop our capital stack, which is our combination of grant, foundation funding, loans, and so forth, donations, that'll make the project financially feasible, we also want to be deliberate in selecting our first opportunity in that it's not only viable for the project itself, but it ensures the organizational strength and integrity of Colorful Dreams. We want to make sure that when we engage in our first project, it's feasible both from the standpoint of the project itself, but the longevity. In the interim, while we continue to wait for an opportunity that we feel would be best for Colorful Dreams, one that is financially viable, one that is in an area where there's a demonstrated need, we are also kind of broadening our range to not only housing services in terms of providing the housing, but utilizing the expertise of the wonderful people we have here at Colorful Dreams to provide counseling. And we are now engaging in the process of becoming certified home counselors through the HUD programs to allow ourselves, while we continue to develop the finances and so forth for our first project, to begin making an impact now for individuals and families. Because what we find is not only one of the biggest hurdles, the availability, but it's also the fact that caregivers, most often family members, not only are bogged down with caring for their loved one, providing for their family through work and so forth, but also the fact that it is a very convoluted and at times very painstaking process of getting the necessary services. So we are continuing to branch out, and we'll soon be unveiling our program there where we will have actual counselors on. Well, we don't have staff here at Colorful Dreams. We're a fully volunteer-based organization who will be able to assist these families through that pipeline.
Thank you for sharing that. So what criteria do you use to determine who qualifies for supportive housing through your program?
Besides the traditional state criteria and the state waiting lists, we have a bit of I don't want to call it a mandate, but a broader outlook on what supportive housing can be. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to tie back to the story of our founding. Where the idea for Colorful Dreams came from was back in 2016. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I had an aunt who had Down syndrome, and they both lived with us at the time. And as their needs and their care continued to progress, it went beyond what we could provide as a family. So we came together and we found a foreclosure about 5 minutes from where we live, and we fixed it up and we're able to provide them a safe, supportive, and compassionate environment where they were able to spend the final years of their lives surrounded by family with the care they needed and so forth. And through that process of doing it ourselves, we found two things. We found the availability and the access to these state programs was, I hate to call it insufficient, but in some ways it wasn't going to be able to provide the care we needed. And then we found in talking to people that our story is in no way unique. So the circumstance that we found ourselves in, I find when I'm talking to people, whether it's through Colorful Dreams, whether it's just through personal conversation, most people either are in a similar situation themselves or know of someone. This is, caring for an aging or disabled loved one is something that many people in our communities are impacted by. So we find that some of the placement will come through the state criteria, through their waiting list and so forth. But we have found through our kind of holistic approach to supportive housing care is that it isn't one shoe fits all. And in certain circumstances, the traditional criteria may not always be the case. So by traditional criteria, my aunt with Down syndrome and my aging grandmother would have likely been placed in separate circumstances, whereas the level of their care, it actually worked out perfect, where there could be coordinated services between the two. So we've found that we don't want to allow ourselves to become pigeonholed by the definitions of this is a home for persons with intellectual or developmental disabilities. This is a home for the aging. Those things and the aging can coexist. And oftentimes it is a great way to coordinate services, to continue to keep them within their communities, keep their family members and the other stakeholders engaged. This will allow us to make the greatest impact in the interim. So we don't want to allow ourselves to become so fixated on one aspect that we neglect the others.
Looking ahead, what's your vision for Colorful Dreams in the next 5 years when it comes to housing and the counseling services that you spoke about?
Yeah, so definitely in the short term, within the next 2 years, we hope to have site control over a property and begin the development of our first supportive housing project. That's within the next 2 to 4 years. Two being more so the timeline on acquiring the site and doing some of the preliminary stuff. And then within the next 4 years, that development and the actual construction will be ongoing. Within 5 years, we hope to have shown that we can both complete the construction and development of a supportive housing project and then the day two stuff, which is not only the property maintenance, maintaining the property, make sure that's kept up to the standards required for caring for these individuals, but also on day two, the services required. So whether that's a coordination between the individuals within the home and the services they get as individuals, the things they're entitled to from the state and the federal government, or that's through the home itself. But within 5 years, we hope to have shown that we not only can deliver the project, but we can deliver an environment that's safe, that's affordable, that provides the care in a way that doesn't separate the individual from their community. What we believe is that caring for individuals with disabilities and the aging should, as minimally as possible, seem like a healthcare environment. We want these individuals to get the care and the services they need in an environment that feels like a home and feels like they're a member of their community. And so within 5 years, we really hope to have shown that Colorful Dreams is an organization that can deliver on this, and then that is an organization that is continuing to move forward on additional projects and continuing to make an impact.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate the opportunity today.